In the late 90s, Pokemon had taken the world by storm, and as an 8-year-old child, I was drawn into its captivating world of adventure, colorful, expressive characters, and assortment of creative creatures, from the cute and cuddly and adorable to the fire-breathing dragons and the straight-up strange and weird ones. The American English dub gave us the Poke Rap as well at the end of every episode that would be stuck in our heads for days on end, and alongside the animated series, we were bombarded with merchandise, toys, the cards, and of course, the Game Boy games. Pokemon Yellow was my favorite, and I distinctly remember having this really cool toy Pokedex that I thought was the best thing ever. I would point it at my cat and pretend that I was discovering a new Pokemon. A great thing about the series, too, is that the main character Ash was specifically referenced to be 10 years old, just around the same age as the kids that were watching, so we could easily attach and identify with him and his ongoing struggle to try to become something great. Even though he was starting at square one, he couldn't control his Pokemon very well, and he could only catch the simplest of creatures like the Krabby. But still, we got invested, and we wanted to see Ash succeed, and get better day by day. Every battle won, every badge acquired, and every victory was like a victory for us as well. They even traumatized an entire generation with emotion as Ash had to say goodbye to Butterfree in that one very significant episode, a coming-of-age lesson that sometimes we have to say goodbye to things that we once knew. But as time went on, we as viewers continued to grow up. But Ash didn't. He forever stayed in that world of childhood wonder and imagination, so what was next for the kids that were watching? Well, here's what you need to realize at this time in American culture anyway. The word anime wasn't really widely known, like it is now especially, and it wasn't something common to see on TV. Most children watching Pokemon had no idea that it was an anime. It was just another cartoon that was airing alongside the other cartoons. So although it was stand out in its popularity, nobody was watching Pokemon and thinking about looking up other anime to watch. It was something that you had to discover. And one day, I stumbled upon an episode of another TV show that was an anime, something that buried my investment of Pokemon and felt like I was taking the next step into a brand new world of excitement and getting a little bit older. Enter Dragon Ball Z. Without a doubt, the most influential and important anime to ever premiere in America, and without its popularity, it may never have prompted other anime to be pushed and realized the way that they were. Oddly enough, the first episode of Dragon Ball Z that I ever saw was a training episode in the Saiyan arc, featuring Krillin, Yamcha, Tien, and Chaozu going into the Pendulum Room and fighting a couple Saiyans from the past. So, a couple interesting things happened here. One is that, of course, I thought these were the main characters. And also, I had never seen action and battles represented this way in animation. It blew my mind. At this time, popular action cartoons here were like Ninja Turtles or Transformers, X-Men, Batman the Animated Series, and so on. Now, some of these shows are really good. Also, they are heavily toned down for children. Dragon Ball Z was also heavily edited and censored from its original Japanese version, but even the edited version that we got was still leagues above the other cartoons when it came to its action and violence. Characters got the shit beat out of them. They got their legs broken, they bled, and they could actually die. I knew I had to see more of this show. I had to understand it, and I just couldn't wait to sink my teeth into it. At this time, the only time I could find it airing was at 6:30 in the morning, so I would beg my dad to make sure that I got up early so I could watch an episode before school. Also at this time, we only had the first 2 seasons that were available and dubbed, that would continuously repeat for quite a while. Every time Goku would get to Namek to fight the Ginyu Force, it would start back over with the arrival of Raditz. Now, I can't remember when I first tuned in, but I eventually had these 2 seasons locked down in my memory bank forever. And when they finally released a season 3 on Toonami, it was like a birthday and Christmas all rolled into one. But it was more than the action and violence that kept me locked in. This story inspired me. It was all about characters facing larger-than-life, unstoppable odds, and they put the work in to overcome them. They had to train, they had to grind, they had to learn new things. Nothing was given to them for free. In order to defeat the next enemy, they had to push themselves to the breaking point and beyond. And as a kid, I was constantly picked on for being short, small, weak, a ginger, a nerd, everything you can imagine under the sun, low self-esteem, difficulty standing up for myself. I've always been an easy target my whole life, but Dragon Ball Z, as cheesy as this may sound, helped me to persevere. I would think about all those scenes of Goku training in heavy gravity, or Gohan forced to be on the battlefield at an early age, or surviving in the mountains all alone. Everything the characters had to overcome helped me want to overcome my own struggles as well. Even to this day, when I'm in the gym working out, sometimes I think about Dragon Ball Z to get those extra reps in, or to push myself just a little bit further. But beyond my own personal experience, Dragon Ball Z was slowly exploding in popularity. Nowadays, there's so many anime to choose from, and so many shonen and action shows exist, but back then, DBZ stood alone as something magical and amazing to all of us. Watching the new episode and then talking about it the next day at school are some of the best memories I have, and I'll never forget them. It consumed me. I started collecting the VHS tapes, I had the action figures, I would draw my own DBZ comics, and they even released DBZ manga here, but they sized them up to resemble a Western comic book. I didn't know what manga was at the time, so to me it was just Dragon Ball Z the comic. All these memories I have of being a DBZ fan, waiting for new episodes, being hyped up and inspired by it, it's something that's so close to my heart, and I'll never forget how it made me feel and how it helped me escape from so much in my own life that I was afraid of. Oftentimes, I wish I could go back and experience those feelings again in the moment, but like all things in life, it's a moment that had its time and things move on. To be honest, I don't remember when I first learned the term anime. People used to just call it cartoons, or even Japanimation, I think was what it was labeled as in the video store that I would go to. But where it really started to show up for those in my generation was with Toonami, a block of programming on Cartoon Network that aired after school and centered around action-focused cartoons. And it was actually thanks to Toonami that we got more DBZ episodes past the first 2 seasons, because it helped push it out to a larger audience. Alongside that, Toonami was our first exposure to other anime like Sailor Moon or Ronin Warriors. Toonami was more than just a block of shows and a gateway drug to anime. It was an experience. It had the sci-fi spaceship setting and the host in the form of a little robot named Tom that actually knew about the shows that he was playing. It made you feel like you were part of a collective, that the people behind the scenes weren't just throwing on any old show that they wanted, but they actually respected and liked the shows that they were playing. In between episodes, Toonami would air motivational AMVs and messages for the audience, some that still hold a pretty profound impact on me to this day.
A boy has the right to dream. There are endless possibilities stretched out before him.
The way that they would hype up their shows and make their trailers and have the voiceover done by Peter Cullen.
The only hope for the colonies, 5 elite soldiers and their legendary mobile suits called Gundam.
This was not just a casual throw whatever on the TV. This was an experience from start to finish, and it made you feel like you were part of something. The original Toonami block was such a lucky break for any of those that were able to grow up within that era. And as the 90s drew to a close and the year 2000 rolled in, this is where everything began to change. DBZ was now not the only kid on the block, and we got an explosion of other great anime shows. Gundam Wing was the first Gundam series to air over here, and talk about being drawn into a brand new world of war, espionage, and darker themes that us as 12-year-olds probably didn't fully grasp or understand at all, but damn, were those mobile suits freaking awesome. The various Tenchi series that I still can't believe aired on a children's network, since it's technically a harem anime filled with sexual humor. Great show, though. Ayako was my #1 crush at the time, and still now. There was this sci-fi western epic called Outlaw Star, which was huge at the time, and now nobody seems to talk about it. Other shows like Big O, and then Rurouni Kenshin, which became another all-time favorite series for me. Rurouni Kenshin was kind of the next level for me. Maybe I was 13 at the time. Story of an ex-assassin during war times, now trying to make amends for his deeds with a vow not to kill, as demons from his past constantly come back to haunt him. Captivated by the sentiment of trying to do better and become a better person while the entire world feels like it's out to get you. Alongside incredible supporting casts like Kaoru, Sanosuke, and Saito, who has a conflicting ideology with Kenshin of just slaying evil immediately without question. I like that the fights were a bit more grounded. I mean, they still defy the laws of physics, but nobody has superpowers here, they're just fighting with swords. And I also learned a lot of Japanese history from it, and I was heavily invested that when the anime ended and didn't cover the final third of the story, this was technically the first manga that I ever bought and read through because I needed to know what happened in the story. And to this day, Rurouni Kenshin has remained my number 2 favorite manga of all time. Now, all these anime are great, but what I was coming to realize as I got older is that anime was not just something geared towards kids. Sure, the ones I mentioned had some dark themes and got incredibly violent at times, but at their core, all of them are geared towards a younger audience, or at least a teen audience. That's not to say that they can't be enjoyed by everyone, but still they have their target demographic. But it was when I was around 12 years old, way too young for the traumatizing experience I was about to have, that I learned that adult anime exists. Around this time, the local Blockbuster had this tiny little 4-foot Japanimation section with just a handful of VHS tapes. At this point, I knew what the medium was, so I was excited to see what new shows and movies that they had to offer. One was called Ninja Scroll. I thought, oh cool, ninjas, action, sounds great. It had a parental advisory sticker on it, but who knows what that's all about, probably just because it's a little bit violent. I had my dad rent it for me, and when I got home expecting another Toonami-like experience, what I got was trauma. I honestly consider watching Ninja Scroll a coming-of-age awakening for me. Never had I imagined I would see as much sex, violence, gore, and incredible animation all in one package. This was beyond anything that I could have imagined, and all of a sudden I understood 2 things. One is that anime could be so much more than what I originally thought. And 2, I wanted to see some more anime boobs. Hey, I was 12 years old, cut me some slack. But it ignited a fire within me to experience more anime like this. Every trip I took to the video store, I would grab another. Akira, Ghost in the Shell, Wicked City, Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust. Every one of these films I consider to be a piece of art. I love the art style, the tone, the atmosphere of them. They felt larger than life, with this dark aesthetic that nothing else could compare to. That gritty, expressive 90s, 2000s style animation, it grabbed me by the balls and it never let go. When you say the word anime, to me, this is what I think of. I think of this style, this look, this feeling, this vibe. To me, this is anime. The hand-drawn, dark aesthetic alongside gripping noir or sci-fi epic stories, deeply psychological, unapologetic in its expression of sex and violence, telling stories in ways that live-action films could never replicate. To imagine Perfect Blue or Demon City Shinjuku or Devilman in any other format than this style of anime, it just couldn't compare. Logically, I can understand that experiencing these films at such a formative age has solidified my opinion of them being the best, but I also cannot fathom anyone thinking that the bright, flashy CGI animation and chibi silliness of a lot of modern anime could possibly compare to just how badass these 80s, 90s, and 2000s films are. They truly don't make them like this anymore. And like all things, the world moved on. Now, I also want to reiterate that finding anime in these times was like a discovery. There were no streaming services, there was no Crunchyroll, there was no YouTube, so you either saw whatever anime was on TV, you rented anime, or you found a super expensive VHS tape at a store that looked pretty cool and you took a risk on it with a cold buy. But in a way, this made anime feel more special. It wasn't everywhere. It wasn't popular beyond whatever kind of small group of nerds you had in your school. And you were lucky when you found something interesting. Around this time, Cartoon Network also began Adult Swim, a night block of shows featuring more adult-oriented animations, introducing us to things like Cowboy Bebop, an absolute masterpiece of the medium, and one that I always recommend to newcomers wanting to get into anime. Nothing quite has recaptured the atmosphere and feeling that Bebop can give you, and its benefit of only being 26 episodes long is that it saves it from ever becoming stale. It's perfect in virtually every way, and one of the best there ever was. Also, Adult Swim introduced me to more shows that I love, like Yu Hakusho, another longtime favorite, and Inuyasha was another big one. Adult Swim also premiered things like Gundam 0083, Fullmetal Alchemist, Trigun, Lupin the Third, and plenty more as well. Mostly, I remained consistent in my love for anime, and I never turned my back on it. However, I did begin to have a huge gap of disconnect with what I would consider the second generation of anime fans in the West. Because in my late high school years and shortly after, life just was busier, dealing with school and projects, trying to make short films with my friends, having a girlfriend at the time, getting ready for life's next adventure. I guess I just didn't have the time or investment level to try to get into new shows. So now was the wave of Naruto, Bleach, One Piece, and that whole big three era of shows. I missed all of them. And these were the gateway anime for many, many people. I never managed to get invested in them, and when I eventually had the time to, their episode count was up so high that it just felt too overwhelming to even begin to try. Not to mention, I already had what I considered to be my shonen shows. Dragon Ball, Kenshin, Yu Hakusho. These were deeply seated into my soul, and if I wanted to watch a shonen, well, I already had the ones that I liked. I guess at that point in time, entering my 20s, it was just easier and more comforting to rewatch what I already loved instead of trying to start a new one. And I also was always looking to find more adult-oriented movies and shows for anime at that time. Paranoia Agent was one that I fell in love with. It was an incredible anime with that existential dread that I was craving in my stories. And I'm not dismissing the big three or saying anything negative about them. I just never got into them. I also missed other anime that were huge at the time, like Death Note, that I didn't get around to watching until 2021. But yes, I did love it. Fantastic show. But through my 20s, everything around anime began to shift. Even though I was watching less of it, it was becoming more and more popular in the mainstream. Suddenly, the anime sections in the movie stores were expanding. More merchandise was coming out. Cosplay took off like crazy, and there were even conventions dedicated to just anime, rather than just being a small element of a regular con. Voice actors were getting widespread recognition, and celebrities would start to mention anime's influence in interviews. This was a night and day difference to how anime was treated when I was a kid. I got picked on for liking it, and I got made fun of all the time. I even remember when one of the, quote, cool kids in school had an anime magazine, but quickly gave it to me when the other cool kids walked by so that he wouldn't be seen with it. The idea that you could see as much anime and merchandise in a store or hear people talk about it as often as they do now, or even see all these dedicated YouTube channels to it and how many views they get and how many people are into it is still so wild to me to this day. The first time I saw manga being sold in my local backwoods town Walmart, I thought, what is going on? I would have killed for anime to be this popular and have this much exposure when I was younger. The times, once again, had certainly changed. Now, other than Dragon Ball Z when I was younger, perhaps the most important anime for my life and orchestrating the direction that it would take came several years ago when I first watched Berserk. I was aware-ish of Berserk because I remember seeing trailers for it before some of the anime VHS and DVDs I had back in the day, so I knew of its reputation, but I didn't know much of its story. Well, in 2018, that changed as I casually threw on the first of the anime movie trilogy without knowing what I was getting into, and it was the first time in many years that I was locked into an anime like this. The dark, brutal nature of its world, Guts searching for a purpose, the love story between him and Casca, the themes of struggling and enduring through tragedy, and of course, the motherfucking eclipse. To note, in the anime trilogy, you don't get the Black Swordsman arc as a setup, so I had no idea what was about to happen with the eclipse, and oh my god, I was in absolute awe of the horrors that befell the Band of the Hawk, Guts, and Casca. There was a moment in the eclipse where I thought, well, it can't get any worse than this, and then it did. When it ended, I needed to know more, and finding out the only way to know was through the manga, well, that's where I went. Now, at this point in time, I wasn't even a big manga reader. I had read Rurouni Kenshin, Dragon Ball, Hellsing, and a few others, but it's thanks to Berserk and this channel and your guys' recommendations that I've read as much manga as I have now. And oddly enough, at this point in my life, I kind of prefer reading manga over watching anime, but that's getting ahead of myself. Berserk began to consume my life. It invoked emotions from me that I had forgotten I even had, and again with the style and aesthetic, it took me right back to that time of discovering those adult anime from the video store when I was younger. But even more than that, because I was now older, I resonated with the story even more. I understood it better than I could have if I got into it when I was young. And where I was in my life at the time, which was an honest-to-God low point that I never want to go back to, I was dirt broke, absolutely alone, dealing with physical nerve pain I didn't understand, deeply depressed. I found Berserk when I needed it the most. A story about a man who experienced the worst life has to offer, but still continues to struggle forward and survive in spite of it all. He falls, he makes mistakes, he ends up hurting other people, but he continuously tries to do the best he can, all while sacrificing everything that he has to protect those that he loves. The emotion, the artwork, the characters, the storytelling, without any hyperbole, this series was and is a masterpiece. So much so that I just had to talk about it. But I didn't know anybody who knew about it. And it's hard enough to try to get my friends to watch an anime. There was no chance I was going to get them to read a manga. So I used my YouTube channel to talk about it, throwing my thoughts into the void of the internet. Side tangent, but I had been trying to do YouTube seriously at this point for about 4 years already. I was reviewing movies, using this channel as a vlog channel to talk about life and whatever I was going through at the time. I never intended this channel to be an anime channel, a manga channel, or a Berserk channel. It's just a channel about me and my interests. But when I started talking about Berserk, people finally started tuning in, and I will be forever grateful and appreciative for that. I just wish my first Berserk videos didn't suck so bad. At the time, not only was I not even caught up with the story, so I got a lot of facts and information wrong, but I also wasn't trying to make a video presentation. I just talked over still images of the manga panels and recorded on an old shitty webcam that sounds like I'm underwater. Just horrendous presentation all around, but I didn't expect people would care or even actually watch them. From there, I opened up to what other manga people recommended to me. Some of the first ones were Attack on Titan and Vinland Saga, two that are still both within my top 10 favorites. And I really did become more of a manga person at this point. Lots of anime change things from the manga, they don't complete it, or they just have some terrible animation, not to mention I can read multiple chapters faster than it takes to watch episodes. So alongside vlogs and reviewing movies, I heavily incorporated anime and manga onto the channel, and within a year, in October of 2019, I hit my first 1,000 subscribers, a day that I will never forget, and after 5 years of trying to do YouTube, it was what I feel is my biggest accomplishment still to this day. But although I have read plenty of manga that I've enjoyed, very few manage to hit the levels of my top favorites, and none even come close to Berserk. And a lot of newer series I struggle to connect to, and beyond manga, when it comes to anime, I seem to have an even harder time getting into new stuff. I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and I don't know if it's just me or if others around my age are experiencing the same thing, but anime at this point has seemed to solidify into something that not only is the consumption of it completely different, but so is it stylistically and within its tone. Anime is as mainstream as it can be right now, and with services like Crunchyroll and other streaming services, hundreds upon thousands of anime are at your fingertips at all times. I'm not denying that this is awesome, but it also might be a little overwhelming. Discovering that hidden gem is getting harder and harder, and so many of them now feel exactly the same to me. Maybe it's just burnout, maybe it's my age, but so many of the current popular shows just do nothing for me. And I try to get into them, but there's some kind of disconnect, and I'm not quite sure the reason why. I miss the gritty, hand-drawn style anime used to have. I miss when anime felt like a gothic or sci-fi dystopian nightmare visually. I miss the immersion it used to give me and how invested I used to be. I'm not saying the animation style now is bad, but it all looks very similar and just kind of blends together for me. The fight scenes are flashy and colorful, but I miss the choreography that I used to be able to follow and be able to understand the fights. You used to be able to feel the blows, the punches, and the sword swipes had weight behind them. Now everything kind of feels like rubber, especially if it's that CGI animation. And everything seems so cutesy now. Anime used to be known for having this badass, rebellious edge to it, and now it's only known for flashy fights or cringe Oni-chan humor. I've tried to get into newer series, I really have. I watched season 1 of Demon Slayer, and I thought it was okay, but not memorable enough for me to think about much after I watched it, or even want to rewatch it. But it's so incredibly popular, and people talk about it all the time, and I feel a little left out. Particularly also with the big one, which is Jujutsu Kaisen, one that people tell me to watch over and over again, and this show is everywhere. It's probably the most popular current anime of today, and I've tried to get into it. I've read some of the manga, I've watched some of the anime, but for some reason, I just can't. I feel like there's something wrong with me, but I just can't get invested in the characters or the story or want to bother to try to learn a new power system in a new show after there's so many others I've learned along the way. Yes, the animation and the fight scenes are very visually stunning, but if I'm not invested with the characters or the story, it just becomes visual noise and not much else for me. I want to like this show, I want to see what everyone else sees, but I don't. It seems very similar to other things that I already like Yu Yu Hakusho, or other shonen that I grew up with. And maybe that's it, that it seems like the same thing, but a different coat of paint. Maybe now that I'm in my 30s, I just can't connect or identify with teenage characters in shonen. I often wonder if maybe I'm just too old for it. But then again, I watch movies that have teenage characters, and I don't feel the same way, so I don't know if that's it either. Maybe it's just that I see the same format that I've seen before and things that I like better. I honestly don't have an answer. But whatever the case, JJK and other modern anime like it just doesn't make me feel anything. So I know I'm an old man yelling at a cloud. I definitely feel like Grandpa Simpson right now. And there are modern anime that I do like. Vinland Saga, for example, has done an incredible job adapting the manga and is the best thing going for me right now. But it's also not a series about power-ups or transformations or who's the strongest. It's a story about a man reflecting on his life and trying to become a better person. That is a place that I resonate very well with right now in my life. And that's not to say that this makes this style of story better than shonen or cutesy comedy slice of life anime. It's just more of my current preference. But I feel like no matter what comes out or what is currently super popular, I always just want to go back to what I view as anime. And most of the anime I love is now 20 to 30 years old. And it seems like this style, this feeling, this immersion that it gave me is truly a thing of the past. What I think of as anime and what anime is now is just different. It doesn't make one better than the other, but time has moved on. It's evolved. I've become old and out of date, and anime just isn't the same as it once was. I have to accept that. As I age, I find it harder and harder to keep up with new things, not just anime, but everything. The excitement of finding a new VHS tape in the wild replaced with the endless amounts of streaming services and Crunchyroll options, I don't even know where to begin anymore. I don't even really know how to edit videos that well. I struggle with this outdated Sony Vegas that I use while kids are crafting beautifully executed edits on TikTok using their phone. I have no idea how they even do it. Everything feels so far beyond me anymore, and I feel stuck in this nostalgia of the past that continuously makes me incapable of enjoying the present. Life, technology, media, all of it moves on and evolves so fast, and I think I'm just beyond the point of being able to keep up with it. But when it comes to anime, other than a few outliers, I just seem to be increasingly disinterested with newer things. I'm glad that people of this generation get to grow up in a world where anime is so accepted, that so much of it is at your fingertips to enjoy, and that it's so easily accessible. And I want current younger generations to enjoy their thing. I had my thing, and I loved every second of it, and I still do. And if it helped pave the way for what people enjoy now, well, that makes it even better. I might not be able to keep up with it all, well or be able to invest like I used to with the newer things, but I am happy that anime has continued to thrive in the way that it has, inspiring and influencing so many creators along the way. Someday I do hope that a director out there throws it back to a classic style like Ninja Scroll and that aesthetic, but for now, I'll just continue to follow my favorites, mostly in manga form. But I will be checking out new things periodically, the continuation of the new Kenshin anime when it drops, as well as just generally keeping my eye open for anything that I think would pique my interest. In any case, anime has created a huge impact on my life, and I would not be the man I am today without it. Despite how popular it is now, it is still often disregarded by people who have never watched it, not understanding that anime is a medium and not a genre. There's anime that's for kids, anime that's for teens, and anime that's for adults. And without some of the themes and messages from its stories and characters, I don't know if I would have coped with particular things in my life the same way. Dragon Ball pushed me to stand up for myself. Kenshin showed me that it's possible to become a better person. Yu Hakusho resonated with how I felt like an outcast. And Berserk is the perfect story for my adult life, as I struggle through challenge after challenge, both from the world itself and within my own inner thoughts. Whatever anime held a profound impact on you, it's not because it's anime. It's because it's what anime is capable of. And that is some of the most compelling and inspirational storytelling that the world has to offer. If one allows themselves to open up to a different type of medium, they may be shocked at how much they resonate with it and how much impact that it can have. We'll never forget all of those anime that changed our lives for the better, no matter what era you grew up in or continue to thrive in. At least I know that I certainly won't. It's been an amazing experience, and I wouldn't change it for the world.